Picture a man of 78 walking across his own kitchen. This is a floor he has crossed 10,000 times. He knows where the table is with his eyes closed. He knows the little lip of tile by the stove. And on the way to the sink, he does the careful thing, the thing his own mother drilled into him before he could spell his name. He looks down. Just a flick of the eyes, half a second, to check the edge of the rug. Watch your step. And in that very same half second, while he is being careful, his hip comes down hard against the tile, and a man who was standing is suddenly a man on the floor, and he cannot tell you why. Nothing pushed him. There was no ice, no banana peel, no dog underfoot. He looked down to be safe, and looking down is where the trouble started. Sit with that a moment, because it is genuinely strange, and I do not want you to let me off the hook too quickly. Here is the number that stopped me when I first ran into it. For men 85 years and older, the death rate from an ordinary fall, the kind that happens crossing a kitchen, is about 373 per 100,000 people in a year. For men in their late 60s, only 20 years younger, that same number is 24.7 per 100,000. So somewhere in the span between the late 60s and the middle 80s, the deadliness of a plain, stupid household fall multiplies by roughly 15. It is not a gentle little upward slope. It is a cliff. For women, the numbers are lower, but the shape is identical, about 14 per 100,000 climbing to over 319. Falls are the #1 cause of injury death in older people in this country. Something like 14 million older adults, about 1 in 4, report a fall every year, and roughly 9 million of those falls do real damage. And the worst of it, the fatal end of it, is concentrated in exactly the people who are trying the hardest to be careful. Now I am a physicist, and when I meet a puzzle like this, I do not start by feeling sad about it, although it is sad. I start by treating it like a crime scene. Somebody, or something, put that careful old man on the floor, and I want to know the mechanism. I want the culprit, and I am going to warn you right at the start, the obvious suspect, the one that everybody in the room already suspects, is going to have an alibi. The thing that looks guilty did not do it, or at least did not do it in the way you think. So let us do this properly. Let us look at the body first. What is a standing human being, physically? Forget that it is a person for a second. Forget the worries and the groceries. Strip it down to physics. You have got a tall, heavy thing balanced up on end, and it is pivoting down near the floor, right around the ankle joints. The whole mass of you, the bulk of your weight, sits piled up high. The center of mass, the single point where you could imagine all your weight concentrated, floats about 1 meter off the ground, somewhere up around your belly. And here is the delicate part. That center of mass sits only a few centimeters in front of the ankle. Not a foot in front. Not way out there. A couple of centimeters. You are balanced on a knife's edge, and you do not even feel it. In physics, we have a name for this arrangement. We call it an inverted pendulum. A regular pendulum, the kind swinging under a grandfather clock, hangs down from its pivot, and it is the happiest, most stable thing in the world. Push it, and it swings right back to hanging straight down, because down is where it wants to be. Now take that pendulum and flip it. Balance it up on top of its pivot instead of hanging below. That is you, standing. And an upside-down pendulum does not want to be upright at all. The tiniest lean, and gravity grabs the top and pulls it further over, and the further it goes, the harder gravity pulls, and it runs away from vertical. It is unstable by its very nature. Leave it alone for 1 second and it falls. So how are you standing there reading me the riot act about how you have perfectly good balance? Thank you very much. You are standing because you are cheating, constantly, brilliantly, without ever noticing. Your nervous system is running a control system, a feedback loop, that catches the falling faster than the falling can build up. Every time your weight drifts a hair too far forward, something in you fires the calf muscles, presses the front of your foot down into the ground, and shoves the balance back. This is the difference between the center of mass, where your weight is, and the center of pressure, where your foot is actually pushing on the floor. You are ceaselessly moving the push around under yourself to chase the drifting weight, like a person balancing a broomstick on the palm of one hand. Watch someone do that with a broom. Their hand never stops moving. It cannot stop, because the instant it stops, the broom goes over. You are that hand. You have simply been doing it since you were about 1 year old, so you gave up noticing. This is not exotic physics. This is the ordinary toolkit. Center of mass, the balance point of a body. Torque, which is just the twisting leverage that a force gets when it acts at a distance from a pivot, and here the pivot is your ankle and the force is your own weight pulling you over, and the idea of a restoring force. A push that fights the lean and drives the system back toward where it should be. These are the same tools you would use to describe a weight bouncing on a spring or a clock's balance wheel ticking back and forth. The remarkable thing is that the same three ideas describe a living person standing in a kitchen, waiting for the kettle, not falling. You are a physics problem that solves itself several times a second, in the dark, for free. Good. Now that we know the body is an inverted pendulum kept upright by a fast feedback loop, we can ask the real question. The loop needs information. To catch the fall before it runs away, the control system has to know, right now, which way am I leaning and how fast. If the information is good, the catch is quick and small and you never even sway. If the information is late, or wrong, or missing, the catch comes too big and too slow, and now you are correcting the correction, lurching, and that is exactly the runaway an inverted pendulum is always waiting to do. So the whole mystery of the falling old man is really a mystery about information. What does he know about his own lean, and when does he know it? And this brings us straight to the obvious suspect. The one I promised would have an alibi. The common sense theory goes like this. If you want to know where the dangers are, look at them. Look at the floor. Look at the crack in the sidewalk, the lip of the curb, the edge of the rug. Your eyes are the best sensor you own, so point them down at your feet, watch where you are stepping, and of course you will be safer. It is so obvious it hardly seems worth saying. And in fact, older people do exactly this. As we age, and even more so after any kind of neurological trouble, people develop a strong habit of dropping their gaze to the ground while they walk. Researchers who study walking see it constantly. Some older, unsteady walkers cannot stop looking down even when you explicitly ask them not to. They are drawn to their own feet like the floor is magnetic. And the scientists have a perfectly reasonable name for why. They call it anticipatory stepping control. The idea is that the old walker is gathering information about where to put the next foot, planning the step before taking it, because the automatic machinery that used to place the foot without any thought is not so automatic anymore. So looking down is not foolishness. It is compensation. It is a careful person whose balance is failing, reaching for the one sensor they trust most and aiming it at the ground. That is our suspect. Motive, being careful. Method, pointing the eyes down. Opportunity, every single step. It is a beautiful suspect. It fits everything. The careful man in the kitchen looked down, and down he went. Case closed, surely, except it is not closed, and I want you to feel the little scratch of doubt that a good detective feels when the story fits too neatly. Because if looking down at the ground was simply cleanly good for you, the safe, sensible move it feels like, then the people who look down the most ought to be the steadiest people in the room. And they are not. The people who look down the most are over and over in the data the people who fall. Now that could just mean that unsteady people look down because they are unsteady, and the looking is a symptom, not a cause. That is a fair objection, and hold on to it, because we will have to answer it. But there is a harder fact coming, a fact that says the direction you point your eyes is not one single thing at all, and that two men both looking down can be doing two completely different things to their own stability. One of them is helping himself, the other one is going to the floor, and the only difference between them is a matter of a few degrees. Let me take you into the room where they figured that out. 10 older people, healthy, somewhere between 65 and 80. 10 more who had survived a stroke, a little younger, 50 to 73. And a mountain of trials, 875 of them, one after another, each person asked to stand and simply hold still while the scientist told them where to aim their eyes. Look straight ahead. Now look down at a spot 1 meter in front of you. Now 3 meters. Now look straight down, right at your own toes. And while all this pointing of the eyes is going on, the floor underneath each person is quietly reporting how much they wobble, not how much they feel like they wobble. The actual sway, measured in millimeters, the tiny drift of the body that never truly stops. And here is the thing that breaks the simple story clean in half. When these older people aimed their gaze downward but out ahead of them, at the ground a meter or 3 meters up the path, they got steadier. The sway went down. The looking down helped. It was the good move, the sensible move, exactly the thing your grandmother's instinct was reaching for. But when they dropped their eyes the last little bit, when they aimed straight down at their own feet, the shoes, the toes, the sway got worse. They became less steady. Same person, same room, same act of looking down, a difference of a few degrees of eye angle, and the effect flips its sign, from helping you to hurting you. And in the stroke survivors, the ones with the least margin to spare, that toe steering wobble showed up worst in the side-to-side direction, the left and right rocking, which is precisely the direction a person is least equipped to catch, because you have no toes out to the sides to push against. You can rock forward and back, and your foot is a long lever to save you. Rock sideways and your feet are 2 little pegs close together. So the mystery just got sharper, not simpler. It is not looking down that matters, it is how far down and how far out. And that should stop you, because it means the eyes are not a hazard spotting camera the way we assumed. If they were just a camera for finding cracks in the pavement, then the closer you aim it at the pavement, the better it should work. Instead, the machine says no. Aim it at your feet, and something you were relying on goes dark. What is it? What did the toe steerer switch off that the path watcher kept on? Let me take you to a different room where they answer that with a trick. They put people in a headset, the kind that fills your vision with a moving picture, and they made the whole visual world flow past, the way the world flows past when you walk forward. And they could choose where to paint that flowing motion. Straight ahead, in the center of your sight, where you read and where you aim, or out at the edges, the far periphery, the part of your vision you are not even paying attention to, the part that catches a bird leaving a branch before you have decided to look at it. And they measured the sway again. And the answer is almost rude in how lopsided it is. When the moving world was shown only to the edges of vision, people stood steadier than when it was shown to the center. And the very far edge, past 90 degrees, way out where you would swear you cannot see anything useful at all, that faint outer ring gave people the best sense of their own motion through space at ordinary walking speed. Better than the sharp, bright center, better than the whole field together. Now put those 2 rooms together, and the fog lifts a little. Your center of vision, the sharp part, the part that reads a name off a mailbox, that part is almost useless for balance. The part that keeps you upright is the wide, low, far edge of your sight, the ground stretching away, the walls, the sky at the corners, the whole slow river of the world sliding past as you move. That river is what tells your body, without a word, exactly how fast you are drifting and which way. And now ask yourself quietly, what happens to that river when an old man drops his chin and stares at his shoes? He feels his sharp, useless center with toes. And he throws away the far, low, wide edge, the good part, the part that was doing the real work. He has switched off the one visual signal that was holding him up, and he has done it in the name of safety. The man watching the path a few steps ahead keeps that river running. The man watching his feet turns it off, a few degrees of eye angle. That is the whole difference, and now you can feel why. But we are not done, and I would be cheating you if I stopped here, because there is a fair objection sitting in the back of the room with its hand up. It says, all right, so vision matters, but people have 2 ears full of balance organs and a whole body full of nerves. Why should losing one visual river matter so much? A younger person loses the same river when they look down, and they do not crumple. So something else must be different about being old. And it is. Let me introduce the other suspects, because this was never a one-man job. Deep in each ear, behind the part that hears, you have a set of little organs that feel motion directly. Tiny loops of fluid that slosh when you turn your head, and little patches studded with what are almost pebbles. Grains that lag and tug when you tip or accelerate, so that even in the pitch dark you know which way is up and that you are falling before you have hit anything. These are magnificent instruments, and they are lined with delicate hair cells that bend when the fluid moves. And here is the cruel part. Those hair cells do not grow back. Not in a person. You are born with your allotment, and across the long years they wear away, and the little pebbles themselves crumble and degrade, and the nerve that carries their report to the brain thins out. It is a slow, silent, one-way loss, and nobody hands you a receipt for it. And study after study finds the same thing, that as this inner sense dulls, standing gets worse and falling gets likelier. So the old man at the curb is already balancing with one instrument gone quiet in each ear. A report coming in fainter every year, and he does not know it, because the brain never tells you a sense is failing. It just leans harder on the ones that remain. And which one does it lean on hardest? Vision. The very thing he is about to sabotage by staring at his feet. Do you see the trap closing? The inner ear fades, so the body clings to the eyes, and then the man aims the eyes at the ground and throws away the good half of vision. He is pulling the one rope he has left, and he is pulling it in the wrong direction. There is a third suspect, and it lives down in the ankles. Remember, this whole balancing act is happening at the ankle joint, the body swaying like a tall pole balanced on that hinge. To catch a sway, you first have to feel it, and part of how you feel it is a sense buried in the joints and muscles that reports the angle of your own body without your eyes. Close your eyes and you still know roughly where your foot is tilted. That sense too dulls with age. They tested it cleanly. Blindfold an older person, gently tip their ankle to some angle, then set it back and ask them to reproduce that exact tilt themselves. The young controls missed by a bit more than 2 degrees. The older people who had not been falling missed by 3, and the older people with a history of falls missed by nearly 5 degrees, more than twice the error of the young. Nearly 5 degrees of not knowing where your own foot is pointed. And that error was not just along for the ride. When they ran the numbers, a foot that cannot feel its own angle came out as a fall risk all on its own, roughly doubling the odds. So stack them up, the way a detective lays out the file at the end. The inner ear, gone quiet. The ankle, half numb to its own tilt. The body leaning its whole weight of trust onto vision. And then the eyes aimed at the toes, killing the far low river that vision was best at. 4 instruments, and 3 of them already reading faint, and the man reaches up and covers the 4th with his own hand. And yet, none of these is quite the culprit I promised you. Because notice, every single suspect so far is something that fades slowly, quietly, over decades, whether you look down or not. They explain why the old are fragile. They do not yet explain why the simple act of tipping the head down, right now, in this second, should shove a person toward the floor. There is one more piece, and it is the one nobody suspects, because it is not an instrument anyone thinks of as an instrument at all. It is the neck. The neck itself is a sensor. And when you tilt your head down to look at your feet, you are not just aiming your eyes. You are feeding the balance system a fresh set of numbers, and in an old body those numbers can be a lie. Let me show you the experiment that pins it down, because it is a beautiful, sneaky little piece of work, and it is where this case finally breaks open. So here is what they did. They took older people, 68 of them, some with aching necks and some without, and they stood them still on a plate that reads every wobble. Now the trick. They held the head perfectly still, facing forward, and then they slowly rotated the body underneath it. The trunk turns, the feet turn 45 degrees, but the skull stays fixed in space. Think about why that is so clever. The inner ear, the vestibular part, only cares which way the head is pointing in space, and the head has not moved. The eyes see the same wall, so vision says steady, the inner ear says steady. The only thing that has changed is the angle between the head and the shoulders. The only new information in the whole body is coming from the joints and muscles of the neck. And the neck lights up and screams that something has turned. It has, but not the part that matters for gravity. And what happened to those old bodies? They swayed more, measurably, dramatically more. The area of their wandering grew by something like 470 square millimeters, and the statisticians will tell you a result that clean does not happen by luck. Twist the neck, isolate its voice from every other sense, and an old person starts to drift. The ones with sore necks drifted worst of all. Now sit with what that means, because it is the whole case in one sentence. The neck, all by itself with the eyes and the ears saying nothing new, can push a person off balance just by reporting a change in its own angle. And now, finally, look again at the man at the curb. He tips his head down to see his shoes. His eyes, yes, lose the far low world at the edges. We covered that. But there is this second thing happening at the very same instant, and it is the quiet killer. By bending his neck, he has fed a big fresh gulp of angle into a nervous system that already cannot quite trust its inner ear, already cannot quite feel its own ankle. The neck says, we have pitched forward. The balance system, starved for a reliable witness, believes it, and it does the only thing it knows to do about a forward pitch. It corrects, it nudges the body the other way, or it fails to nudge in time, and either way the pendulum that was quietly humming along gets a shove it did not need. He did not trip on the curb. He tripped on a number his own neck handed him, and his own worn-out machinery had no way to check. That is the culprit, not the eyes alone, not the ear alone, not the ankle alone. It is that the head is a sensor package bolted to a swivel, and when you aim the eyes down, you cannot help but swivel the whole package, and the swivel talks. In a young body, the talk is checked instantly against 3 other honest witnesses, and the lie is caught before it costs anything. In an old body, the other witnesses have all gone hoarse, so the loudest liar wins. There is one more layer, and it is about posture, about where the head lives, even when you are not looking down on purpose. They measure a thing called the craniovertebral angle, which is just a fancy name for how far forward your head pokes off the top of your spine. In a sound posture, that angle sits somewhere between 55 and 86 degrees. Let it fall below 50, and you have what they call forward head posture, the chin jutting out ahead of the shoulders like a turtle leaning out of its shell. And here is why the physics cares. Remember the pendulum. Remember that the whole game is about where the center of mass sits over the pivot. That heavy head, 8, 10, 12 pounds of it, hung out in front, drags the center of mass forward away from the ankle toward the very edge of the little region where you can still catch yourself. A person with forward head posture is standing, all day, every day, already tipped toward the fall. They have spent their margin before they take a single step. So does anything actually fix it? Here is the part I find genuinely lovely, because it closes the loop from theory all the way to a person's life. They ran a trial, 6 weeks, elderly patients with bad necks. One group did ordinary exercise, the sort of thing you would guess helps. The other group got their neck posture actually corrected, the head pulled back over the spine where it belongs. Then they scored everybody on a standard balance test, and there is a known line on that test, a threshold, below which you are officially at high risk of falling. The exercise-only group started below that line and 3 months later was still below it and had even slipped back a little. The posture correction group started below the line and climbed clean across it from around 43 up to 48 and stayed there. Think about that. Not new muscles. Not new inner ear hair cells, those are gone for good. Just aiming the sensor package correctly, putting the head back where its numbers tell the truth, and a person crosses from the danger side of the line to the safe side. And all of this is happening against a tide that is rising, not falling. The death rate from these falls has been climbing for 20 years across every band above 65, and it does not climb gently. It roughly doubles with each decade of a person's life. So this is not a small curiosity about old necks. This is the leading way that the injuries which kill and cripple older people actually get started. Now let me pull the whole case together, because I promised you a mystery and I owe you the solution laid flat. We started with the body as an inverted pendulum, a broomstick balanced on the ankles, kept upright not by strength, but by a fast, ceaseless conversation between the senses and the muscles. We watched the obvious suspect, looking down to see the ground, and we found it half innocent. Cast your gaze a meter or 3 ahead and downward, and you actually steady yourself. It is only the last few degrees, the stare straight down at the toes, that turns traitor. And then we found why it turns traitor, not for one reason but for 4 working together. It blinds the far low edge of vision channel that feeds the steadiest motion signal. It leans hard on an inner ear that has gone quiet with age. It asks help from an ankle that can no longer feel its own angle to better than a few sloppy degrees. And on top of all of that, the very act of tipping the head pours a fresh, misleading number out of the neck into a system with no spare witnesses left to fact-check it. 4 failing instruments and the one deliberate motion that manages to poke all 4 at once. That is what makes this such a quietly cruel little problem. Almost everything that goes wrong with an aging body goes wrong slowly, out of your hands. You cannot will your hair cells back. You cannot sharpen a numb ankle by wanting to. But the aim of your own head, that one you hold in your hands every waking second, and it is the single input in the entire control loop that you can consciously point in the wrong direction. Nature built a machine that stays upright by trusting its senses, and then arranged that the one sensor you can freely misaim is riding on a hinge you turn 100 times a day without a thought. So the next time you see someone late in life walking with their eyes nailed to their shoes, do not think, there is a careful person watching their step. Think instead of a pilot who has taped over half the instruments and shoved the others out of true, flying a plane with almost no altitude left to lose. The fall was not carelessness. It was the machine doing exactly what its numbers told it, with a head aimed at the ground and a system too tired to argue. Keep your eyes up on the far world where the horizon holds you steady, and you are not being brave, you are simply handing the old machine the one honest number it has left.